Recon, brought to you by Cantex Roofing. I'm Clint Scott. He's Rob Bro.
We've gone through 3 quarters. Now it's time for the 4th. Get your 4s up. Get them up!
The last 3 teams on the Red Raiders schedule all had noteworthy off-seasons. The first game of the stretch will be at home against BYU. After an 11-2 season, the Cougars were primed to be a favorite to start 2025. However, Vegas odds would go down after starting quarterback Jake Retzlaff was going to be suspended for breaking the school's honor code. He opted to leave the program and is now at Tulane. That made it a true quarterback battle between a trio of young arms that seems to have been won by Bear Bachmeier. The final home game of the year will be against the UCF Knights. Their off-season news included a new coach. Well, sort of new. Scott Frost accepted the position for the second time in his career. He was originally UCF's head coach in 2016 and 2017. The latter was a perfect 13-0 year. He'll take over a UCF team that finished with a dismal 4-8 record in 2024. The regular season finale will once again be against West Virginia. This time, however, it's in Morgantown. The Mountaineers fired Neil Brown in the offseason, and much like UCF, welcomed back a coach who already had a stop there. Rich Rodriguez will don blue and gold once again. A former Mountaineer player, he was the head man there from 2001 to 2007, where he won 60 games, including 2 11-win seasons. Since then, he's had stops at Michigan, Arizona, Ole Miss, Louisiana Monroe, and most recently, Jacksonville State. Despite making a bowl game last year, there will be plenty of turnover for West Virginia as they try to improve upon a 6-7 2024 campaign. The Red Raiders have their sights set on Arlington and can't afford a slip-up down the home stretch.
I think last week, Clint, was the toughest stretch for a 3-game. If you go through the non-con, the weakest. That second one with road games at Utah and Houston, then home against Kansas. And then you have the toughest, obviously, with Arizona State and Kansas State, with Oklahoma State at home in between. Even if you don't particularly know or can rate that second quarter, I think we know who those teams are. I think we know a little bit about Houston in year 2. I think we know a little bit about Utah, or at least what we can expect. I mean, we know the offensive coordinator now. We know the quarterback at Dampier. We're certainly wondering how he can translate. But I think just Utah makes more sense to me as the Utah of the past 20 years than of last year. It just makes sense to me that Whittingham doesn't have 2 bad years in a row. I think you can look at last year and say it makes sense to me, or last week, that Oklahoma State isn't going to have that year as opposed to maybe most of their other years. I think they can certainly get to some kind of success this year, at least not 0-9.
It'd be hard to do that.
But heading into this final stretch, it features 2 teams, really 3 teams. One that I have no faith in at all. That's UCF. Mm-hmm. One that I'm probably overconfident in my mind, but overconfident in my heart, but in my mind, have them as one of the worst 3 teams in the league. That's West Virginia. And then BYU, I really don't know. Now, they've announced Bear Bachmeier as the starting quarterback, number 47, which is like road to glory stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that defense can replicate what they did last year. And the offense, I don't think, was good enough even last year. And now they have a true freshman quarterback for the first time in their program history. So it's an interesting week to discuss.
Let me ask you this, because I agree with maybe not overconfident on West Virginia, but looking into just more of who they've brought in, because they brought in, and then there's the cherry on top is Rich Rod, which we will get to him certainly whenever we get to West Virginia. But like, it feels weird to say easiest stretch in the Big 12, and I said all last week on our shows and stuff that I wasn't going to say easiest or more difficult schedules when it comes to the Big 12 slates as a whole, but when we're breaking down an individual one, it certainly seems like this is with the conference games, this is your easiest 3. Now, tricky is a word I will always bring into Big 12 schedules until we kind of iron out some details on these programs and we know in a 5-year window what they're going to look like and what the conference is going to look like as a whole. But who interested you the most between the three in the offseason?
I mean, just as far as like who's a contender, who's not a contender, it certainly was BYU. And they had the whole Retzlaff thing. I think Oklahoma State made a lot of quiet moves. UCF, Oklahoma State. I think West Virginia. I guess not quiet, but it didn't feel like they added 72 people. And it's pretty close to that number. And then UCF, nothing positive excited me. It was just fun to watch the dumpster fire.
And then Scott Frost just kept, and not even with UCF, but just kept on saying things about Nebraska.
Yeah.
I was like, are you focused on the job that, and I get people asked him questions, but you don't have to answer everything in great detail like you have been sitting in a dark room thinking about everything that went wrong with the program that you quarterbacked for. You don't have to do that.
Right. No,
it sure seemed like he did.
No, you don't have to do that at all.
But still, if I ranked my interest of the three, and I think that they all three, for bad reasons, had some of the most noteworthy off seasons in the Big 12. BYU's number one, just because players over coaches are going to grab my interest, and then also, like you said, BYU's coming in, supposed to be a favorite, and then just kind of digesting their off season more. You kind of started off with this. I don't know what you have with any three of these teams because, BYU, if they find a way with a lot of new faces, if they find a way to replicate last year's defense, I'm not sure the Retzlaff thing will make that big of an impact if Bachmeier can hold down the job one, and then McKay Hillstead would be the second one there. If he can hold down that job and then just not be a mess, which is easier said than done, this would be their first true freshman. But after them, then I think I would go West Virginia second because I just am so interested by Rich Rod's career. Mm-hmm. And then UCF is third, but I've enjoyed two of their off seasons, haven't really cared about, BYU's as far as I was rooting for all of that to happen. And theirs obviously is started with an honor code, and you don't want to. Good for them for sticking with their school's principles and their program's principles is what I would say. Yeah.
Jake Retzlaff was good for BYU last year because he didn't try to do too much.
Mm-hmm.
If Bear Bachmeier can be a true freshman quarterback that just takes what's open and has a little juice every once in a while when you need it in a close game, I think BYU could certainly replicate some of what they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't think that Jake Retzlaff was the reason they won 10 games. In fact, he's kind of the reason they didn't win 11 or 12.
Well, you get into that atrocious loss at home to Kansas where the offense was terrible. He specifically was bad in that game. And that ultimately is a game that keeps them out of the Big 12 championship. I know they have another loss there, but still, that's the one that I circle going at home. That wasn't even the Kansas team. I know it's a part of that stretch where Kansas looked better. They did not play well that game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's scored under 20 points, and you lose that game because the offense was not good. And it started with the quarterback who was not good. So I'm with you.
It's just, to me, you mentioned the defense, and I've mentioned it several times. Their turnovers were pretty insane last year. And I think turnovers are a fickle thing. I don't think that BYU can be as good at forcing turnovers. Their special teams also was pretty electric at times last year. I think back to the punt return that really turned around that Kansas State game and turned it into kind of a blowout.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know. I think BYU can certainly win 8 games this year, but I don't see them coming into Lubbock and making a real push. Now, it could be a competitive game. It's the Big 12. But I think you'll be favored in that game.
Well, I think you will too. You should be favored in all of your home games first. I have knocked BYU down to the tier out of a true contender to the same level that I put like TCU and Kansas and Cincinnati.
Sure.
I think they should be bowl teams. I think that they could, in some regards, punching up makes it seem like in my mind, they're way low, and they're not that, but they could get a couple favorites.
Yeah.
And I think you have to take them seriously. And at the same time, they're close enough that if someone is, arguing, hey, they should be a contender, I'm not going to scoff at that. But I've knocked them down not because of Retzlaff leaving. It starts with what we've just been talking about is defensively, there is so much turnover, and that is how they won games last year. That was their better unit, and it's the best defense in the conference. And you have 3 returning starters, and even then, and the thing I like about their defense is that they have a lot of names that are either homegrown or were transfers a couple of years ago, and they've been on campus a while. And that's something that BYU is really good at, and I like that about it. I think that can certainly help. But at the same time, it's not like you can even look at BYU and go, well, BYU's defense is always good, right? Because 2 years ago, that defense was not good. It was bad.
Right.
And it had a lot of holes in it. So I don't think you can really lean on the consistency factor. And I'll say this about all three teams in different ways, but I'm not sure what you have with this BYU defense. In my opinion, it'll be the pieces specifically they lost on that defensive front, which were just big-time guys. Like, I still think they'll be physical. I still think they'll do all of the things that BYU's specifically defensive brand of football is. But I'm not sure that they'll be as dominant. So can they make up for that with their linebackers who are pretty good? Can they make up with that with a new secondary? I'm going up and down the BYU roster, and I think when I picture the contenders in the conference, they all have elite to outstanding in some unit or some player. And I think BYU's got some good players. I like LJ Martin. I like Chase Roberts. I don't think that those guys in my mind are like top of their position though. And then especially when you get into units, I don't think they really contend with like the linebackers as a whole. I don't think they're as good as Kansas State's. I don't think they're as good as Texas Tech's. But I think they're good, but I don't think they're great. And that's just how I picture and view the whole BYU team.
Yeah, I think they're a really solid 7-5, 8-4, 9-3 if they get all the breaks kind of football team. And they got all the breaks last year. At what were they, 10-2 in the regular season?
Yeah, and then
they won the bowl game.
They beat Colorado in the bowl game. That was weird.
But they got a 28-7 against Baylor, and Baylor came all the way back 34-28. Then you early on in the season when Oklahoma State is just really starting to struggle, 38-35 against Oklahoma State. They beat UCF by 13. They beat Utah by 1. That Kansas game you mentioned was 17-13 Kansas. They lost by 5 to Arizona State. And then they beat Houston by 12. And I think in that stretch, even in those 2 losses, they struggled offensively. So I don't think Retzlaff, I don't really think he's a big loss. I don't think it's a positive that he's gone. But I think Bear Bachmeier or the other guy, McKay Hillstead. I don't think he's Hillstead and Bachmeier really feel like BYU quarterbacks. McKay. What a name. I don't think that those 2 guys are worse than Jake Retzlaff, though if the true freshman quarterback thing pokes its head out in tough situations, you could lose some of those games that were tight that you won last year.
The other side of that, though, like Bachmeier isn't just a no-name coming over from Stanford, right? I mean, this is depending on where you look, mostly it's a 4-star. And I think a couple of publications have him as 3 stars, so it's kind of that tweener, whatever will mean to you with stars beside names. But his offer sheet was way better than I thought it was. I mean, you had offers from Georgia, from Alabama, from Oregon, from Notre Dame.
Legit prospects.
Yes, BYU. And so there is a very, very high end, which, by the way, makes it really interesting for another quarterback who is in this class, but after his mission will be, like, if he has a really good year and you bring in Ryder Lyons after his mission and comes back, I am way in on whatever that quarterback situation looks like. And for BYU, that would be a good thing.
Best quarterback room in the country.
I mean,
it's not Texas Tech anymore.
Very talented.
Can we just 1 second get off track for a second?
Sure, always.
Is Bear Bachmeier the first true freshman transfer quarterback to start when he gets to his new school?
Ever?
Yeah.
I mean,
it doesn't feel like that's happened before. He was practicing spring football with Stanford, right?
Yeah, I mean,
then there was the coaching change?
It's the same change that, I mean, you get David Bailey out of, and so I off the top of my head, I wouldn't know another situation
he
like
did not,
that.
I mean, you say out of Stanford, but he didn't play for Stanford.
No. So, he's the typical early.
He got his pads, and then transferred to BYU. So even on the BYU website, it says previous school Stanford.
And it's like the Micah Hudson thing. Micah Hudson is a Texas A&M transfer.
Did he finish the? I'd have to go back and look at the Tech roster, but do you think they have A&M on there?
When they referenced him in reports,
I know they said previous Stanford quarterback.
Oh, I know. I mean Hudson.
Oh, yeah.
They said A&M. So I'd have to go look and see if that's still there.
On the actual roster. But Hudson was a Red Raider for an entire year.
Right.
And a half.
Right.
Bear was there for 2 weeks.
Right. I know.
I don't know. It's just such an odd situation. He's a true freshman.
You know, if you had said that with confidence, that he's the first true freshman starter transfer at quarterback, I would have said, yeah, sure.
So wasn't Baker Mayfield the first walk-on? Certainly was at Texas Tech. He might have been the first walk-on at a Power 5 school to start at quarterback. I'm trying to remember that stat. But then you also have this Bear. I don't know. It's just a weird situation at quarterback. But I don't think he's going to be worse than Retzlaff. I think he can replicate that. 2,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I think he can do that.
And if you bring up the prospect side, in a lot of ways, he probably has a higher ceiling. But again, true freshman is the one thing that is holding that back. But
is he going to throw bad picks at bad situations? And
But if he's, if his trajectory is towards that high prospect side, some of the times, this is where I go, like, who knows, the offense might be better.
Yeah.
Now, that's a game-to-game situation. But all in all, I'm BYU has been such a whirlwind of uncertainty, but I've never dropped them going like, well, they're going to go 5-7 this year.
No, I think they'll be closer to last year than they were in their first year in the Big 12.
Yeah. So let's go to first confidence percentage in that game.
Probably the least out of the three, but 70%.
That's about right. I said 75%. No. So let's go to the Knights. And what are they? What is UCF this year?
Bad.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, I don't really have much to say. I think Scott Frost was an interesting hire. I don't think he's washed. I do think, I wouldn't have said it in a press conference, but I do think Nebraska's a really tough job to be at right now. I wouldn't have called it the wrong job. But I don't know what they have at quarterback. I don't think they do either. They're having to replace R.J. Harvey. They're having to replace a couple of wide receivers. Having to replace their kicker who left mid-year. And then defensively, they're also trying to replace a lot of production. So not only, right, were they bad last year down the stretch because everyone left, I don't know that they refilled the coffers in a way that makes me think that they're going to improve.
I think as a whole, UCF is a really interesting story because as far as FBS goes, they had like a shooting star type of feel to them, right? And really, if you're dating it back, like took off going like to the 90s, and it's not even like a TCU type of rise because TCU had at least some history there. Although certainly if you go back to their Mountain West to what ended up in the Big 12, it was a quick rise, but they were at some of that level back in the 80s and stuff. And UCF got labeled this sleeping giant. They have they've got a lot of things to love because they've got an active fan base. I think that they are vocal and also they show up, and they're a sneaky watched team in the Big 12 when you look at the TV numbers, and I think that's important to have beside you. And then you've had multiple coaches that have had success there pre-Big 12. And even Gus Malzahn had 2 years of 2 9-win seasons, his first 2 years there, and then they make the Big 12 jump. And I think that the Big 12 Gus Malzahn did a number on UCF. And the culture was bad. They were sloppy. They weren't disciplined. All of that should be very, very frustrating and was frustrating for that Knights fan base because, like you were getting to, what's confusing about them is they had some serious talent in the Big 12 on these last 2 years. They've had some big-time stat guys, big-time playmakers, and so you go, okay, well, why couldn't they put it together? And what worries me what would worry me if I was a UCF fan is a lot of those things I just said, I was saying about Nebraska from 2018 to 2022, And so I don't know, is that same, there's so many variables, right? The Scott Frost that was there for 2 years, that 2017 year national champs, specifically, was that lightning in a bottle? Is it completely different because it's in a different league? But I mean, over there, you've got really good recruiting in your back door, and they've backyard, whatever. They've done a good job of making that better. And I mean, they're not still going, we're consistently beating Florida State and Miami and Florida and all that, but they've done a good job of growing that. But I think that the next 2-3 years are the most important seasons that they've ever had in their history, even going before when they made the Big 12 jump, because if it's a mess again with Scott Frost as they move on with him to the second time, I mean, you're going into the conversation that no Power 4 team wants to be. You're getting put beside Rutgers and Northwestern and all of the jokes with Vanderbilt, although they're trying to turn things around. And maybe even worse because those other teams at least have been there for a while. They've just been bad and have been holding down the bottom end of big conferences, but they just got here. And so I think you're looking at turning the term UCF sleeping giant to just a wash. And I'm not sure if they have the roster to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly not this year.
I think the best thing that UCF can do this year is to just stabilize.
Yeah.
But I don't really see a world where you can stabilize above 5-7. I don't think their quarterback's very good. He played at Indiana and Tennessee in the last 2 years, started at Indiana, played a little bit that season. Had 128 attempts with 2 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. And then last year at Tennessee in just some mop-up duty was better, but...
And then behind him, you have a guy that had some starts last year, but that was after the mess of whatever KJ Jefferson was, and he wasn't good.
I don't know. I don't think UCF's going to be good. I don't think they'll be competitive in the Big 12. I think they probably win a couple of Big 12 games. And by a couple, I mean 1 or 2. I think they'll struggle in the non-con as well with North Carolina. I think their absolute ceiling is like maybe a bowl game, but I think that should be the floor for most Big 12 programs. I think I would put Texas Tech's confidence here at 85%. And I don't go higher because it's a Big 12 game and things happen. But
Last week, I talked about, and have said this a couple of times, if you're going to be the team that you can be,
sure,
you're going to have to blow out a couple of teams. UCF is one of the, like, to me, in the Big 12, even on the road, it's Houston early, it's Oklahoma State at home, and then it's UCF at home.
You're heading into a bye week.
And so just to win, I'm in the 90s. I mean, I'm probably right. I'll say right at 90%. If you actually blow them out, time will tell. But if you lose that game, especially at home, and also at that point in the season, and for what it's worth, UCF, I mean, if they are hanging around, if they have 4 wins coming into Lubbock, they'll have you, and then they'll have Oklahoma State, and they'll have BYU. They'll have 3 games for bowl eligibility, so you get some Scott Frost motivation or whatever. You could see a plucky team, but you should still beat a plucky UCF.
Yep. Yes.
A feisty Knights team.
Yep. I mean, Joey McGuire is, 7-2 in these fourth quarter games with a loss to playoff Texas 2 years ago and a loss to Colorado last year. They've been good in these situations. And if UCF somehow comes in here with a Heisman candidate, or if BYU comes in here with a Heisman candidate and gets after Texas Tech, I don't see that happening.
For what it's worth, just to throw out numbers, which we're about to throw out a bigger one, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
UCF 41 incoming transfers.
Yeah.
This team is just – it's also one where you kind of throw –
Plus true freshmen.
Yes, and if you're trying to go like, well, what were they bad at last year? And it was pretty much everything. And then you're also looking at those incoming transfers. I don't know if they've brought in impact guys.
Yeah.
They've brought in guys who are going to see the field, so I guess that would be impact guys.
Right,
but
right.
What could actually improve them this year? This is something that I think is different between them and the team we're about to talk about.
Let's talk about them.
West Virginia.
Mountain Mama.
Can I start, before we get into them, every time I think of West Virginia, I will forever think of one of the most frustrated I was at a loss. And I don't know why it's still stuck with me so much, because it's not like, I think, it's not like number one, but every time I see them, I think of that Morgantown trip a couple of years ago where Shuck goes down, and it's not just that. And then, Baron Morton was put into action. He didn't have a good game. It's the quarterback who beat you that frustrates me to no end, who, by the way, we'll see you again in Morgantown. Nico Marchiol?
Marchiol.
It is Marchiol.
Yeah, I think so. That's like the 4th most frustrating West Virginia loss in the last 10 years to me.
Fair.
But that just speaks to how frustrating
Yes.
West Virginia's been. That one where Clayton Hatfield missed a 10-yard field goal at halftime, and then you get blown out in the second half. I think that was Nick Shimonek's year,
Yeah.
17. And then obviously the field goal at the end with the game where Dylan Cantrell caught a ball over the guy, like diving over him.
Yeah.
Skylar Howard owns Texas Tech. That's a frustrating one. But yeah, and what Jaden York. If he jumps a half second later, he probably catches that Baron Morton touchdown. And that's the genesis of the AC sprain that bugged Baron Morton for 2 seasons. So yeah, that is a frustrating game. And I think you kind of rectified it last year. But if you just talk about Joey McGuire in West Virginia, you've hammered them twice in Lubbock, and they won the one there. So I think West Virginia is a really tough place, just beyond the rosters. I think West Virginia is a really tough place to play.
I think that's your starter of the conversation of like things that could be concerning about this game.
I think West Virginia has an opportunity to be close to bowl eligibility. I think they could be fighting for it in week 14, which is when you play them, the final week of the season. You're both coming off buys, kind of a weird late buy. It's in the second to last week of the year. So I think you'll be in a position to be the hunted here at the end. But if you're trying to punch a ticket to a Big 12 championship and they're trying to punch a ticket to the New Mexico Bowl or the Armed Forces Bowl, what kind of gets your rouser up more, right? What's more what's more important? The Big 12 championship.
Right. I think unless the rest of the Big 12 is somehow just really, really beats each other up and there's not, 2 or 3 teams that kind of rise above the rest, you would think that this last week is going to have a lot riding on it for a couple of programs, and hopefully you are one of those programs. But I would be really surprised, and this isn't saying anything to you, it's more of the Big 12. I'd be really surprised if this game didn't have Big 12 championship implications on it in some way, shape, or form. Like if you went into it and you knew you had a spot in Arlington, which, by the way, for playoffs, you'd still want to go win that game, right? It's not like, rest all the starters. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not the NFL.
Right. But there should be, and there's pressure on every Big 12 game. In some ways, you could say there's pressure on BYU and UCF to not slip up against those teams because you're going down the home stretch and you just can't afford that. But this game should have all sorts of pressure around it for Arlington.
Yeah.
Can I go on a side road for a second?
Yeah. Always.
Where does West Virginia, just across all sports, rank as like programs you hate in the Big 12?
They're top 5.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I feel like some of that went away a little bit because you had the Neil Brown connection.
It's more of a respect-hate, though. Like, they're a team that I would want to get into a rivalry with.
I think it'd be really fun to be a part of their fan base.
Even with Bob Huggins. Like, I hated Bob Huggins. I think the baseball games have been chippy for some reason. In the last several years, you've had some chippy series with them. And then if you remember back, this is when you were still a Kansas fan, but if you remember back, you had the whole Sledgehammer saga with Cliff and Dana Holgerson. So there's been some heat between West Virginia and Texas Tech, but certainly I wouldn't put them above like a TCU, Baylor, or Oklahoma State.
At one point, when you had
and then Utah's just a hate, not a.
Yeah. And it's really just football. I don't really care about because they don't care about basketball. They don't care about that. At one point, when you had the trio of Dana Holgerson, Bob Huggins, and Randy Mazey on there, they had an underrated, hateable trio of head coaches.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Sorry, that's just a side question because they're in my top 5 too. And I think they can be again because although Rich Rod is interesting, he is abrasive to me.
Yes. And that's why I love him. The hard edge, baby. We're getting rid of TikTok. Every single roster position is in pencil. Nobody has anything locked down.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has the opportunity. Maybe Jaheim White, but he won't say it. And so I think that West Virginia's in a really fancy opportunity here. 44 people on the 2 deep on offense and defense. Okay? 44 people. How many are transfers?
I'm cheating because I know what the total number is.
Yeah.
In the 2 deep, I want to say it's like 35.
Yeah, 32.
32.
Yeah. And that's
because it's 54 transfers.
You have some wide receivers back. Left tackle centers back off last year. And then Jaheim White and Nico Marchiol. I don't think Nico Marchiol is a very good quarterback. But Jaheim White is an all Big 12 type player. This
is where I think it's different between the other 2 teams we just talked about. Because they do have an absolute dude in Jaheim White. But he, and they have a couple guys behind him that I think can be really good supporting roles. But this offense, and part of this is because Rich Rod, by the way, if you're wondering, hey, is he still doing spread option stuff?
Yeah.
Yes. Now it's a little bit different than what he was doing in 2001. But you look at, so this is what I really like about the hire, because it feels different than what the Scott Frost hire was at UCF. If you closed your eyes, you don't actually have to unless you want to. If you close your eyes and I told you that there was an offensive coordinator who took a Louisiana Monroe job for an offense that was winless the year before he got there and was scoring 16 points per game And then the offense helped them get 4 wins the next year and bumped it up by 5 points a game. And then that OC got offered a head coaching gig at Jacksonville State, and then in all 3 seasons won 9 games, and that includes a transition from the FCS level to the FBS level, and that same team 2 years in the FBS wins Conference USA, and the whole time rushes well over 3,000 yards. You go, well, that's a young and upcoming, up and coming offensive coordinator, and you go, well, it's actually a 62-year-old who's been around for a long time and has coached in over 300 games. But still, like that, it's not like he's lost it. Like I don't know
Right.
what you have with Scott Frost as a coach anymore. Rich Rod still has it, and the guys that are returning, and by the way, brought a handful of Jacksonville State players specifically on the offense with them. I think that they could maybe surprise the Big 12 in a couple of ways. Like they do have that ceiling to me, but it's closer to if they rattled off and won 8 games. I mean, I'm not going to be floored by that. I think I have them still closer to the 6 or 7 win mark in year 1 under Rich Rod, but it feels like they brought in some productive players that are still jumping up a level, or a couple of like JUCO guys and stuff like that. But still, they have production where like a lot of the UCF guys don't, and that's where I think the biggest difference is between them. And they also made a bowl game last year, so even though there's a bunch of new, they've got some returners that still know what it takes to get to 6 wins.
I think Rich Rod could come in and win 4 games, but be the roughest, toughest game up on everybody's schedule. And I think he'll beat some teams. I went and picked every Big 12 game, and I wanted to pick West Virginia to win most of them. But I think I settled on them being like 3-9, and I hate it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they can certainly surprise a couple of teams early in the Big 12. I think they can absolutely make a bowl game. And I think they're the toughest game down the stretch. Certainly they're the only road game down the stretch. But there's a reason when it was snowing in spring practice that Joey McGuire's running around saying Morgantown in November. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a game they're looking at.
I will say something that is working against them. Not a harder schedule, not an easier schedule. Their more winnable games and more beatable teams are all on the road. When you're looking at, like, you're at Houston, you're at UCF, you're at BYU, you're at Kansas. And so, if you look at their schedule, what's their most winnable game? It's probably still some of those road games, but you never know, right? And so that's something that won't be helpful. I also think they have a really interesting non-conference. Now, it's not like to the interest to me of like a TCU or Baylor, who both, by the way, play SMU.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. But when you look at theirs, hosting Robert Morris to start, that should be a win. And then at Ohio, which I don't think is just an absolute layup. They should be better than Ohio. They should beat them. And then they're at home against Pitt. And I'm not sure what Pitt's going to be this year, but you have the backyard brawl and everything goes out in a rivalry and all that stuff. But I also think that they'll be pretty evenly matched talent-wise. The game is in Morgantown, so that should help. But, if they drop Ohio or if they drop Pitt, most likely it would probably be more if they drop that game against Pitt.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really high uphill climb. It doesn't make me think that they'll be any easier to beat or any better or worse in the Big 12. But as far as like what could they be, what win total could they reach, that's going to really cripple their bowl game cap in my mind. But I'm with you.
Certainly. Certainly.
I can't imagine them, Rich Rod, putting out a product this year. Maybe outside of that game that they go to Arizona State. I'm not picking them to be blown out in any of these games, even if I'm kind of with you. Like, they could be a lot like what Houston was. last year, record-wise.
Yeah.
I don't think the offense cannot be as bad as Houston's was because that hasn't happened since the late 90s with Baylor. But, there's going to be, if you're, kind of evening out things, the defense won't be as good as what Houston's was too. And I think Zach Alley, a defensive coordinator, it's a guy that was with Rich Rod at Jacksonville State 2 seasons ago, co-DC at Oklahoma, a really talented young guy. I think he's going to have as much to say about this season as what the offense will.
Yeah.
Because if they end up putting out a mess, then all of this conversation is all for naught.
I've not published my Big 12 predictions. I'm going to finish it today, publish it tomorrow. That would be Wednesday if you're listening to this. So it should be published by the time this is up on YouTube, the Red Raider Recon episode that you're listening to. But I've currently got West Virginia at 5-7. I could easily move them to 7-5. Easily.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an undefeated non-con with a 2-7 Big 12 record. I don't know that they'll have the steam to finish a Big 12 slate because I don't know that they have a Big 12 roster right now.
Yeah, I don't think I think it starts with the quarterback.
Yeah, but Indiana had a James Madison roster.
Yeah.
And rolled through the Big Ten pretty much. So I don't know. I don't know.
It is funny though that one player is really holding me back from feeling more confident in them, and it's
it's a pretty important player
because Marchiol to me is I've just always labeled him as a poor man's Garrett Green. Yeah, and I think Garrett Green was at least an elite runner, and I don't think Marchiol is an elite runner. He's certainly not an elite thrower.
No.
I'm not sure if he's even a plus thrower. He might be a plus runner.
Yeah, if Marchiol's a poor man's Garrett Green is a poor man's, Johnny Manziel.
I was thinking Avery Johnson.
And Avery Johnson's a poor man's Johnny Manziel. Yeah. You're on the third or fourth wrong.
Garrett Green was a poor man's Devin Dampier. Dampier's poor man's Avery Johnson. Yeah. There's your.
So I look. I also think Garrett Green was just such a gamer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Marchiol is.
I wonder because they bring in Jalen.
But he can hand it off to Jaheim White.
They bring in Jalen Henderson, so part of me doesn't even think he's going to start every game.
I don't think Marchiol will be starting against Texas Tech. I'll say that.
Yeah, and so I think for West Virginia, and you can say this about every team, but really what I think that they're going to be and what this offense and roster will be built to do and not to do, the worst thing that will happen to them is if they get behind at all. I just don't think that there's going to be much of a chance for comebacks with this offense.
Yeah. So I'd put this similar to the BYU game. I don't think West Virginia is as good as BYU talent-wise, but they are on the road. So I'd put it probably a little higher at 72, 75%. I think you can get this win. I think if you played them 100 times, you'd probably win more than 70 of them. So I'll go with 73%.
I think we're going to flip because I was 75 against BYU. Just with the road, I'll go down to 7. And also with not knowing just how good or how bad West Virginia will be, I'll go at 70% right now. But I still feel good about that game. Overall, any likes or concerns that we didn't talk about with this stretch?
Well, I already have a concern because Quentin Joyner has gone down at running back. Mm-hmm. That's something new at this point in the Red Raider Recon recap series or preview series.
Yeah, as we filmed this, that was announced yesterday.
So you do have, I think you go from a pretty deep running back room to a moderately filled out running back room on the cusp of a thin running back room. There's some reports now that a Roy Alexander could be more like a Debo Sanders type, where you're having some jet sweeps and lining him at running back some.
Also, maybe moving a secondary piece who was a running back in high school.
Flipping him, which I think would be, he's a true freshman. That's Henderson. So
if you're going to do it, now's the time.
And now's the time to just have him over there. If he's just going to perform on special teams, whatever, you'll redshirt.
Some have been trying to spread a rumor that Jacob Rodriguez will move back to running.
No.
Just kidding. Just one carry. Just give him one carry. Goal line carry.
No. Maybe Lee Hunter.
Middle linebacker versus...
No.
man. Actually, you know what? If I got to pick what defensive player I'd want to have one offensive snap, it would be Skylar Gill Howard.
Well, he was a running back and receiver in high school, tight end. Then they moved to linebacker, and then from linebacker, defensive lineman in college.
And I still want to give him the ball.
So I do think there's some options there. I don't think you're thin automatically at running back with the loss of one guy, but I do it puts some mortality on the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're deeper than you have been in years, but that depth only works if everyone's healthy. So I do think there's some mortality here. I think by the end of the season, by this stretch of the season, you won't be as deep as you are today. That's how college football works. Nobody else will be either. But no, I don't have a lot of concern. I think Joey McGuire's been really good down the stretch in his seasons. He's had to punch back to get to bowl eligible 2 years ago. He's had to punch through to get to 8-4 last year. He had to punch through in year one, though they kind of ran out of steam against that Texas team in their final Big 12 game. So, or regular season game. So I don't have a lot of concerns on this stretch with BYU and West Virginia and your opponents, UCF. But I do have some concern, just the mortality of college football.
I think that's
that you could have some regression by the end of the year. But I think you're deep enough to withstand it.
That's a good way to put it, because it has felt like you have been just bulletproof. And although that doesn't, take away my expectations for the season, it still is like, well, that was a guy that could have been your best weapon.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it doesn't cripple the running back room either. It's why it's a good thing that this whole offseason, Coach McGuire has been calling them the committee. And we talked about this way back in the running backs episode. He said, how would you feel about these running backs if Quentin Joyner was never on the roster? You'd still feel pretty good about those two guys.
Yeah.
And also, for what it's worth, I don't like how the opportunity clearly has been made. I am very interested in Adam Hill. A lot of winning ways there in high school. A big back who's also freaky athletic. Was going to see the field anyways because he's been linked to special teams, which makes sense for where he is as a college football player. So this opportunity may be coming a little bit early. But I think they like him as a running back prospect too. So
state champion hurdler in the 300 and got second to Jacoby Williams.
Right.
Now
and it was close.
You look at a lot of positions and say, like at quarterback, you say, well, he's a 2A guy. How can he be good as a redshirt freshman? Well, Jacoby Williams is a 2A guy last year, was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent a year in the conditioning program. There's also the whole thing that he's a white running back with Adam Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. I don't think he's Quentin Joyner, but he's not some schlub.
He's, if you lined up Quentin Joyner and Jacoby Williams and Cam Dickey and Adam Hill, and if you were watching game film on them and you were trying to break down running styles, you've got four really athletic guys. That's the thing that you should start with.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also four vastly different running styles. And the white running back thing is interesting because you would think he is only a straight line. He's just big. He's 6'1".
Yeah.
The only thing he's good for is going through the A gap, and he sees your linebacker and he's going through him. He's got some shiftiness to him.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that you have four vastly different, maybe not vastly, but four significantly different running styles.
Yeah, and you go back to that running backs episode, and it was the do-it-all was Joyner, and then it kind of the thunder lightning with Williams and Dickey, and maybe you have a thunder lightning thing kind of happening, or there's a new committee in town, or maybe we just call them the meeting, and it's just a duo.
The teams. My one and concern maybe is too strong. Maybe it's a note. One thing when it comes to specifically BYU and UCF, if you have a big win in Manhattan, specifically with BYU, is there a hangover or something like that? But also, you know what you also haven't done under Joey McGuire, much like you're trying to go undefeated in the non-con for the first time, which if it doesn't happen this year, I don't know if it ever will. You haven't won all of your home games yet. And so there is a part of me in the back of my mind, like, all right, if you slipped up at home, if you had one that you're just going to make you pull your hair out, what game is that? And I don't...
UCF. If you slipped up in the final three?
No, if you slipped up at home, like through up and
UCF.
down. See, I think it's Kansas.
Why?
I think they're the best team at home. I think they're the best team you're playing at home.
Yeah, so that wouldn't bother me as much.
I'm not. No, not bother you. Which one would like if it happened? What's like the?
Oh,
which one would you predict?
What's most likely?
Yeah.
Okay.
In your mind, because it would have been BYU to start the year, but the more
Did you say something about pulling your hair out?
Yeah, it'll. Well, if you lose a home game, it doesn't matter who it is. It's going to make you upset.
No, I'd be much more upset losing to UCF. Much more. Okay, yeah, most likely probably Kansas. Yeah, Kansas most likely. Though I think you have a real opportunity to be 7-0 at home.
And I think you will be, but that's like, again, that's why I'm not,
Yeah.
I shouldn't go fully concerned. It's just something that I'm like, that's something you're trying to do this year too.
And then I go BYU probably.
Yeah.
Then Oklahoma State. Then UCF. No, then Oregon State. Then UCF, then the other two.
Yeah.
That's how I would power rank
I also think Oregon State will be better than UCF.
Yeah.
So, anyways, just a side thing to throw into that because the overwhelming theme of this should be you need to be 3-0 in the back half, just like you need to be 3-0 to start the season.
Yeah.
Just some quick, if you're looking for some MVP type players for each team, tell me if I miss one. BYU, LJ Martin and Chase Roberts are going to start that, but I also think linebacker Jack Kelly and then safety Tanner Wall will be in that discussion. For UCF, this is a little bit harder.
Bear Bachmeyer, maybe.
Well, yeah, we'll see what he looks like. UCF, we'll see what ends up happening. I think they have a very interesting defensive end transfer from Pitt, Sincere Edwards, who I think is a good player. They also have,
was he linked to Texas Tech for a second?
I think he was, and maybe we just saw him in the portal and we all went like, at that point where we're just like collecting anybody you wanted.
Right.
The other defensive end also Kelly, and I'm not sure how to say this. I think it's Nigelic.
I'm not going to correct you.
All right. And then they also have a safety back, Philip Dunham, who's very good. And then you have to look at the quarterbacks, Torrin Jackson or Curry Brown. And really, this is the only one I'm going to add quarterback to because we don't know what they have there. Taven, sorry. Autocorrect. And then I think their running back, Miles Montgomery, who was...
Yeah, Nigelic?
I don't know.
It's interesting.
I think their running back, Miles Montgomery, will be good too.
By the way, their entire specialist room transfers.
All new. And then for West Virginia, and we've already talked about Jaheim White. He's
the MVP of the three teams.
And then obviously you need to know who, at this point, Martial is.
Yeah.
We'll see whenever you see them if that's the case. One of the receivers that they added who comes over from Jacksonville State, Cam Vaughn, I think is a really sneaky good ad. Now, if you have a quarterback who can't throw it to him, doesn't really matter, so we'll see. But and then they also have one of the JUCO guys that they bring in, defensive end, Jamari Robinson, 10.5 sacks last year. For what it's worth, Dodge City Community College. So there's a pretty big jump. And then they also have a Colorado State linebacker, Chase Wilson, who should be anchoring the middle of that second level. So you know, miss anybody to you?
No.
These are hard to do with these three.
Yeah. I think of the three, I would have listed Jaheim White and Chase Roberts. I think even LJ Martin is a little bit on the cusp, though he had a pretty good season last year.
I didn't say Tiger Bachmeyer, which I actually do think for Bear Bachmeyer is a plus, having your brother as a receiver.
Certainly, both in from Stanford.
And I think he's going to be in the starting unit, too.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's interesting.
Bachmeyer to Bachmeyer! Let's go to the fan question of the week, shall we?
Rich Rod.
Yeah, we've kind of answered it in this episode, but will Rich Rod or Scott Frost have more success in their tenures at UCF and West Virginia?
In year one, it's going to be Rich Rod. I guess there's like an age thing. I guess if Scott Frost somehow goes 15 years and Rich Rod is there for 5 or 6 or 10, maybe that gives the edge to Scott Frost. But I just have zero faith right now in Scott Frost and in UCF. Maybe they can get that recruiting going again, but that's been the issue for me. And it just feels like West Virginia is a little more in on their football program right now.
Year one, it's going to go to Rich Rod. 5-year window is going to go to Rich Rod. If he's there for 10 years, if they're both there, it's going to go to Rich.
Yeah.
I don't think the Scott Frost round 2 is going to work out. I'm not like rooting against it or anything.
No.
I think this is a different UCF, a different type of program. I think the Scott Frost you saw at Nebraska, that's your Power 4 level of Scott Frost.
Yeah.
I don't think that takes anything away from the national championship they won in 2017.
No.
But I can't imagine this tenure going well.
No. Hey, before we started, you were talking about the table, and I thought you were talking about this level, and you were talking about this level. You were right. This table's off center.
See?
It took me 15
Yeah,
minutes.
I knew it. When you said it wasn't, I was like,
No, I didn't say it wasn't, but I didn't know what you were talking about. It just clicked.
We got lights
I
flickering.
thought you were talking about
ceiling tile missing over there.
I thought you were talking about this level, but you were talking about this.
I saw a gecko earlier in the building.
You just have to be this and not
It's
this.
falling
You know what I
apart.
mean? I wonder if that's the gecko that Choice Woodman stole his tail from. We'll be back
And
next
then,
week.
Hey, next week, we almost ate the gecko. Also tried to catch a squirrel. Choice Woodman's an interesting person.
Yes, he is.
Showed up one day to the station with a dove in his grill. Didn't even feel that he hit it. Next
All the
week,
way in the grill.
right where doves should be. Yummy in the grill. Next week, it's going to be really fun. I'm excited about next week's episode. One, we're going to, maybe not quite as in-depth, but we are going to go over some of the schools that you are missing in the Big 12. We're going to give our official predictions for the Texas Tech season, who we think is going to be in the Big 12 championship. Season. I am Brian Kelly, and this is my family. We might even give college football playoff picks. Who knows? Playoffs! I knew it. Jinx. Can't talk for the rest of the episode. Good thing it's over. Any final thoughts? See you next week.